so good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited about talking about chocolate soul. So let's talk about My Chocolate Soul. Where did you come up with that name? Where does it come from? Because to me, it just makes me feel good.
Well, then that means I did something right, because that's exactly how I wanted people to think about the name in the business. So when I first started the business, I had a couple different names. You're trying to find sort of what the right name is for your business. And when I thought about it, I really didn't want it to be mine. I wanted everyone to hear the name, to feel like it was theirs. I think each of us feel like a part of our soul is chocolate, right? And so when you think about how chocolate makes you feel, for some people it makes them feel happy or joyful or at peace, or, you know, sort of the take me away just for 10 seconds. I wanted everyone to hear the company's name, My Chocolate Soul, to be able to relate to the company. Because people ask, like, why don't you just name it Ramona's Chocolates or something more personal? But I really wanted everyone to feel like the name belonged to them, but they could personalize the name of the business, so that everyone has a piece of My Chocolate Soul.
Yeah, and that's every time I say it, I think of it like that, like it's my chocolate soul. No, it's not yours, it's mine.
Then I did something right.
Yes, you did. Now, where is it located?
We're located in Chicago's Uptown neighborhood. We're at 4442 North Broadway, between Montrose and Sunnyside.
Nice. And you are near Target?
We are. We're 2 doors down from Target.
Okay, so how is that for business?
That's been great. I mean, we get a lot of foot traffic. We are probably the only one of 2 local businesses in a strip of franchises. So for us, it's great because we get a lot of foot traffic when people go into, you know, AT&T, Target, the bank, who like stumble upon our chocolate shop. And I should tell you, we're right next door to Weight Watchers, which is the running joke both for us and our Weight Watcher neighbors. So people come in and like, you're next door to Weight Watchers.
That's
like,
awesome.
I know.
But they can go in before they go to Weight Watchers.
That's true. That is true. And we do all natural chocolate, so we think we're a really great compliment to be next door to Weight Watchers. We follow less is more approach, and so I feel really confident in what we do, being next to Weight Watchers and being able to still promote our chocolates for people who have weight loss goals.
Yeah, that says something. Let's talk about why Chicago. Like, are you from Chicago?
I'm from New York. I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx. My family's still there. I have lived a lot of different places in the country, and I love Chicago. I love this city. It's the only city that reminds me of New York, but with a different quality of life. So it's just, your money goes further here. I think that people are nice here. Like, one thing about Chicago, and I've lived in a lot of other cities, is that it's a big city with a community feel. So I feel part of a community in a very large urban area, which I think is hard to find in other cities. So it's beautiful. The people are nice, and it's funny, people say, oh, Chicago is so cold. I'm like, but the people are warm. And I can't think of any other place I'd rather run my business. And I think about that every once in a while, like, would you go somewhere else? Would you go warmer, you know, Arizona, Florida? And I'm like, nope, I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
That's awesome. And how long have you been here?
So I've lived here now going on 14 years.
14 years.
Second time. So I lived here once, left, moved around, and came back. Chicago just brings you back. I feel you on that. I left, came back. So it does have that effect on you. And so how long have you had My Chocolate Soul? So we will be 7 years old in January.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, 7th anniversary coming up.
And so tell me, as a child, how did chocolate become something that you say, I wanted to roll into a business?
So I never thought about running a business. I should tell you, I'm a trained mathematician. So I'm a trained mathematician with a PhD in education. I always loved school, and I always loved learning, and I wanted other kids who looked like me to have the experiences that I had in school. Like, learning is everything. Knowledge is power. But I loved candy as a kid, and I still remember what the candy store in my neighborhood looks like. And I remember my cousin and I, that's when candy was a penny.
Like,
you could take $1 and get, like, you know, the brown paper bags full of candy. And that for me was always a special time, like just going to the candy store, figuring out what you were going to do, how you're going to mix and match. And I just always loved that time. I always loved sweets. So I never thought about running a business, but I always loved sweets. And for me, it became about, how do you make chocolate healthier? How do you make dessert healthier? Like, I'm one of those people that looks at the dessert menu first, you know, always saving room for desserts, but really got frustrated standing in the stores, in the grocery store, any store, Googling ingredients. Like, I got really frustrated looking at basic pound cake that didn't have butter, eggs, sugar, like just basic things that you would make at home. You have this whole paragraph of chemically made ingredients, and I thought, there has to be a way to make things that we love better. And so I baked from scratch. I did that for 20 years. And it wasn't until I took a pastry class, just looking for something to do. And it really opened up my world to the culinary industry. I never thought about it. And I thought, this is awesome. Pastry chefs get to make these desserts. They get to create. And people love them. Think about how happy you are when you're eating a great meal, or when you're finishing that great meal with dessert. And I wanted to bring that kind of joy, that kind of happiness to people, but through dessert, through chocolate.
And tell me about, I know this, having known you for quite some time, that you started at a community kitchen, and now you have your own location. So just tell me, because you used to tell me some stories like, oh, I see her at the kitchen, or, it just, that community was, something that I would never see, but you got a chance to see that.
Well, it's one of those things when you start, it's like, okay, I'm going to start a bakery business. And this was right before I got into chocolate. And it's ironic that we now run a chocolate business, not a bakery. But I didn't really know what that would require. And a friend of mine was like, oh, Ramona, here's a shared kitchen. Because you can't, in Illinois or Chicago, you can't bake and sell food out of your home. And so the shared kitchen concept is a great way for small businesses to start out without the capital. Most people starting out don't have the money to build a brick and mortar space. So you get to rent kitchen space. You can still sell your items at farmers markets, wholesale, if you're selling to other stores, or I started out selling to businesses, doing corporate gifting and events. And so it's a great way to really test your concept. Like, is there going to be a demand for my product without you going into debt or building out a space and not having your business concept work? So I did that for 5.5 years. It took us 2 years to find the space. A lot of failed, lease negotiations, a lot of promises. 6 months of construction, 6 weeks that turned into 6 months. And next year will be our 1 year anniversary in the store.
Wow. Yeah. And so it's interesting. I love the idea of test day before you launch. And so, there's all this discussion around startups. Chicago is known for 1871 with these amazing startups, but 90% of startups fail. So when we talk about existing businesses, it's the fact that you have the ability to say, I made some failures. Like, I created that. And that happens. And when that happens, then what's your sweet spot. And because a lot of startups fail, we don't get to see the 7 year. So it was just that idea. So what has been some of your lessons, as an existing business owner? If you can share that, even in that process of going from, shared into now having your own space.
Well, it's funny, as I was listening to you, I got chills because the data, like the first 5 years, over 80% fail. And so you make it past the 5 year mark and you're like, but then between 5 and 10 years, there's still a very large percentage of businesses that fail, mostly because of money. And so every year, it's funny, I was just sharing with someone, every year that I'm in business, I add a lesson learned. So, 7 years, 7 lessons learned. And one of the things that, one of the things I'm still sort of grappling with as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is that there are no 2 days that are the same.
That's right.
Which is fine. I kind of dealt with that when I worked in education. But nothing is predictable. You can have the best plan, marketing plan, financial plan, production plan, and nothing goes the way that you expect. And so it's being able to be prepared for the unpredictable, and being able to be quick and resilient and keep going. For me, so I got chills because it's still amazing to me that I am in business. And I always tell people, I told people when I started that this business would be my walk of faith. And, it's really easy to walk in faith when you start. At least it was for me, because I had a 6-figure nest egg. I had a really great plan, and, it looked like it was going to be smooth sailing. By year 3 or 4, the waters got really rocky. And for me, the past 3 years have been incredibly difficult. And the only reason I'm still in business is because I really believe this is God's calling for me.
That's awesome.
Our tagline is spreading joy through chocolate. My people who know me, I'm all about peace and joy. And I do that through my business, but chocolate is the vehicle for which I bring joy to people's lives. And so the only reason I keep going is because I feel like I've been given this tremendous opportunity, and to stop would be saying, no, I don't want that blessing. I'm going to sit around and wait for the next one. That's right. And where I come from, you don't give blessings back. You really maximize them, and then you be a blessing to other people's lives. And so, as I think about lessons that I've learned is you have to keep going. You have to keep going, like no matter what. You have to know in the core what it is that you're doing, what your mission is, and how that affects other people.
That's right.
You have to be careful about who you trust, because everyone that pretends to, support you doesn't. There are a lot of people who are sitting on the sidelines, not waiting for you to fail, but expecting that you're not going to make it.
Absolutely.
And for me, one of the biggest lessons was dealing with vendors. As a woman and as a woman of color, one of the things that really was challenging to me over the past year was dealing with the construction industry. And dealing with equipment vendors and contractors and subcontractors, and that for me was a huge lesson learned. And it's funny because people are like, when are you going to open your next space? I'm like, I'm still recovering from this one,
space,
and we're going to max that space up before I even think about going through another construction project. We'll be making chocolate 24 hours a day at our space before I even think about another facilities project. So for me, it's, making sure your contracts are, locked tight, that your vendors are very clear, and being very firm, like holding people to their word. When they say they're going to do something, do it. When I promise a client I'm going to deliver, I deliver. If that means I'm up for 3 days in a row,
right.
You do what you have to do.
Right.
And you have to hold your vendors to that same level of expectations.
Yeah.
So there are a lot. The lessons are daily. Let me put it. They just are. But you harness the big ones, because those are the ones that can really put you out of business if you don't pay attention to them.
And I think a lot of the things that you share is the experience you have as running a business. And so that, I tell people to start a business, that's easy.
That's the fun part.
That's the fun part. But to maintain a business and, maintain vendors and payroll and unreceivables and taxes and all of that. That's the other part of the business that nobody really wants to deal with, right?
And it's the part that people don't see. Like, people come into our shop and it's beautiful. I designed it to make it feel like my home. So people feel like they're walking into my kitchen. We have an open kitchen and people can watch us make chocolate through the window when they come in through the door. And so it feels warm and, homey, and it smells like caramel and all of that. But people don't see when I am there, 24 hours. My neighbors do when I'm there, until 3 or 4 in the morning, and then you're coming home and you're doing, payroll, and you're responding to emails, and you're still dealing with outstanding issues, and you're trying to figure out how to pay taxes and how to make payroll, and that's the not fun part of the business that people don't see. They only see the glamorous part.
They do.
And in my business, they only taste the glamorous.
They
part.
taste the glamorous.
Yeah, the chocolates are so amazing. I'm like, yay,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's that part of the business that's not fun. It's not, and
I agree.
But you still have to do it.
So we talk about fun. So let's talk about capital. Have you received any capital?
I do have an SBA loan.
Okay.
And that was what I used to do the build out of the space.
Nice.
So you asked about the shared kitchen concept. It's a great way to start a business, test your concept, see if there's a demand. For me, and I found out that there was. But I realized when I started the business, my goal was no debt. I didn't want any debt. I didn't want any investors. I was going to do it on my own, because we're raised with that,
that's
superwoman.
Superwoman syndrome. You don't ask anybody for no money.
That's right, because that's a sign of weakness, and we can do it all ourselves. By the 3rd or 4th year, I realized 2 things. I was never going to be able to grow in a shared kitchen, because you don't have access to the kitchen space to do the level of production that you need to do to be self-sustainable. So I knew early on I was never going to be able to stay in a shared kitchen a long time. I thought I would still be able to do a build out on my own, but each year, that nest egg was becoming strong. Like, it wasn't really a nest, because little pieces were getting picked off, and I realized at some point I was going to need more money than I had. And so you kind of weigh your options, and for me, given where I was financially, debt was the option, because there were tax benefits or tax advantages for me. And so I applied for a loan. It took a long time, but for me at the time, that was what I needed.
And what was your process with your loan? How long was that process?
It took a year to close. Yeah. And mostly because the loan covered the construction and it covered the space, we had to have that nailed tight. Like it just had to be airtight.
So you had to collect, and I want to make sure we get this understanding. You had to collect bids, you had to get estimates, you have to show that. So there's some work. A lot of times when people are going after loans, they don't understand like it's just the application. No, you've got to do that work and you got to prepare for that. And so that is what is required with anyone who gives you money, whether that is, to your point, an investor, traditional lending, or even, we're going to talk about crowdfunding, but understand that people are going to want to see all of that. And you've got to do that upfront work. And oftentimes when we tell people, like, are you willing to do that? That's, we've got all these amazing entrepreneurs, but who's going to really take the time to do that? That's a small number. That's a very small number who's going to put that time knowing they may not get it, right? Yeah. It's a risk on both sides of the fence.
I would say one of my lessons learned was do that from the beginning. So one of the things I did was from the beginning, set up all the business stuff. All, the LLC, separate checking account, separate credit card. Like, I didn't want any mixing between...
Commingling.
Yeah, of the funds. I mean, a lot of my personal money went into the business, but I didn't want it to be the other way around. Yep. And so, filing separate taxes, Schedule C's, however you set up your business. So when it was time to apply for funding, I had everything. I could run the income statements and the profit and loss. Like, I kept really good books. And that was critical because, so the process was you apply. I had an amazing loan officer and she said, Ramona, it'll probably take 12 weeks. It took longer for me because it took 6 weeks to negotiate the lease, right? Between the lawyers and going back and forth on the red lines. Then it was, we thought we had a contractor, but we could never get anything in writing about how much it was going to cost. So then we had to do the bidding process. And because the loan was covering the capital improvements, we had to have everything. Basically down to what the equipment would cost, what the plumbing would cost, all the subcontractors, how long it would take. And so by the time we did a bidding process, my loan amount was set. So we were trying to find a contractor that would fit within the loan amount. And so it took a year from the time that I applied to the time that I closed to actually be able to get money. And you have people who are waiting, my architect, your contractors who are waiting for that first installment to get started. So it really took a lot of time. What worked for me was that I had a really great loan officer and that I had all my documents. Like everything they asked for, I had. Like even and I advise people scan everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Scan everything. In case you lose something, it's on your computer. That EIN letter, you never think you're going to need again.
That's right.
Because you're like, oh, I know my EIN
Or you need your driver's license, right?
Yes.
You need your driver's license. So you have to scan that and save. So I just
save your bank
statements. Agreed.
Save receipt,
everything. I couldn't agree.
And that is what helped me.
Yeah.
And again, I applied to 2 different agencies. I went through a community development financial institution. Because a traditional bank was not going to give me a loan and certainly was not going to give me.
Well, we know that right now, which is why we're talking about this, is that, you've got both. One, we have a double negative, right? We're women and we're African American women. So the chances of us getting a loan is very, very, very small. And so we have to go to these non-traditional places to get the funding. So let's talk about your ask. Your ask. What are you asking?
So I'm asking for money for equipment.
And how much is that?
$75,000.
Okay.
So right now we do everything by hand. We, as in these 2 hands, still make
chocolate by hand.
Yes. And for me to be able to increase production, increase sales, I need to be able to do it faster. There's some of our processes that I'm still going to do by hand. I'm still going to cook our caramel and make truffles the way that I make truffles. But the equipment that I'm looking for would be like having 10 of me. So I hand dip every one of our truffles and caramels, which takes time. The equipment that I would like to purchase would allow me, I don't know if you remember the scene from I Love Lucy where she and Ethel are working at a chocolate factory and the chocolates are coming out of the machine and they're coming out so fast, she's putting it on her chest. I'm looking for that kind of equipment.
That's a good visual.
Which allows me to not have to hand dip everything. So it's like having 10 or 20 of me. It would allow me to do, 100 pounds of chocolate in an hour.
Wow.
Which for me takes about a day or two to do it by hand. So I'm looking for equipment which will allow me to increase efficiencies and production, to be able to meet, like I still do corporate events, but I want to scale that up so significantly. But it's hard to scale when you're relying solely on human capital. So some of the equipment will just allow me to achieve economies of scale.
Nice.
And be able to increase efficiency.
So I want to make sure that I hear. So having this equipment takes you in an hour right now. You are produces how much, and then what does that machine?
So I can hand dip anywhere from maybe 60 to 90 truffles in an hour. Right? Okay. On a machine, we could probably do up to several hundred, 300 to 400. You just put them on a belt. They get covered in chocolate. They come out. You take them off.
So that's a lot more money.
Lot more money.
So that's a lot more money. And so that $75,000 that will get you that equipment. Is there anything outside of the equipment that will cover, that you're looking to also use that money
So it would
towards?
allow me to do 2 machines, one dark chocolate, one milk chocolate.
Okay.
And then there's some extra. I need to free up time to do more business development and marketing. I shared my plan with you. It's a growth plan, not a business plan. Our proof of concept is tested. Yeah. We're really all about accelerating growth. I called it my 2020 growth plan, sort of where I want to be at 2020. And that allows me to do that. It allows me to also free up time to do really strategic business development and marketing. Like there are a couple of really large corporations I've been talking to. I won't say their names, but one of them, they're like, Ramona, we really want to work with you, but you don't have the capacity to do fulfillment for us. This allows me to increase capacity to do fulfillment, and I'm okay scaling. I don't have to be the overnight success, right? Where we're selling, $8 million chocolate in 1 year. I'm okay sort of getting to that, getting to $1 million in 2 years, doubling that in the next 2 years. I'm okay with that because I want to make sure that I maintain quality. Because the first time somebody gets a bad piece of chocolate, they're not coming back to me. So I have to make sure our chocolate is always amazing 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
And so I'm okay scaling that way, but the equipment allows me to do that, and it allows me to scale and work with companies in a way that I can't do because I'm still doing all the production. I can't go out and do all the sales too. So it allows me to kind of just achieve a level of automation that'll be important for me to grow.
Automation is key. It's a fundamental thing to marketing.
It's critical.
And making sure that, one point we used to call it duplication, now it's automation. But let's also talk about legacy. And making sure that we have legacy in place, because as you know, when one business owner, when the founder leaves, the business goes away, and so that work, in essence, is gone. Yeah. And so, what does legacy for you? What does that mean?
It's funny because I hear that, succession planning and things like that. I'm single, no kids, and I always think about legacy as family.
Me too.
Sort of what do you leave for the Thomas name, right? And I think about, I have 9 nephews and nieces, and I think about, handing the business down to them, sort of keeping it in our family. And I'd love to be able to do that. And, one of them is actually open to moving here. I like Chicago. So that would be great to also keep it in Chicago. But, as you think about expanding, it could also obviously move to New York, keep production here. There are a lot of different options. So I'm still figuring out sort of the legacy. Honestly, I don't really know what that means. It means it goes on without me, which is why I never named the business after me.
That's right.
Because, people say you are your brand. That's true to a certain extent.
Agreed.
But I think the values that I bring, the idea is that when I'm no longer doing it, that those values someone else can bring in terms of quality and service, which are really important to me. Knowledge and sort of how you keep that in the community, how you support other entrepreneurs. I spent 18 years in education before I started the business. I told you I love school and I love learning, and I want to be able to figure out a way to use the business to do that for the generation behind us. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be me. I mean, my goal is in 5 to 7 years to sell the business. keep a stake in it.
Yeah.
But allow me to do other things in the community with young people, whether that's teaching, whether that's, starting a nonprofit and doing some kind of philanthropy. I'm not really sure. I spent 13 years in philanthropy. I gave away other people's money, and I'd love to be in a position to be able to give away my own. And so these are the things that are kind of in my brain as I think about legacy. I think about it, but I don't think about it because I'm like, I'm still too young. There's still a lot of work to do, But yeah, so that's kind of where I am in terms of keeping the business moving beyond me. And keeping those values.
I will say that I always tell people that they should never name their business after their name, because I agree, just being in branding and marketing, you just shouldn't, because it doesn't create that legacy. So I agree with you. Paying it forward, you've actually talked about it. The importance is that we see that, in Chicago, we have Mr. Johnson Publishing Company. We have Tom Burrell, Burrell Communications. So it's time for this. It's time for a new team to come in and to be able to pour. So, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Burrell, and John, they're all connected. And so it's important that we create an ecosystem where we can continue to support other entrepreneurs and businesses and pay it forward, so that we don't get to this point right now where we're looking for people to say who can invest, because we need that capital to be. Johnson & Johnson Publisher Company couldn't be who they are today without having some level of investment from someplace. So paying it forward, what does that look like for you?
For me, it's thinking about two things, and I hadn't really thought about this until I started my business, but I meet so many other entrepreneurs who have amazing businesses and amazing ideas. For some people it's part-time because they're still working their full-time job. For others, it's full-time. And it's figuring out how to keep that entrepreneurial spirit going, but not so much in the ideas, but so much in the money. I'm part of, there are a couple different Black entrepreneur groups and sort of by Black groups, and that sort of how do we keep our money in our community. And one of my closest friends, we talk about that. He's like, we need to create wealth in our own community. And so how do we keep our dollar in our community? Because it leaves immediately. So it's part of it's a personal responsibility. What businesses am I supporting every day, every week, in this city, not only, in the community where I live and work, but in other communities where I don't live and work. So I think about that a lot. How do I support existing businesses, particularly of women and particularly of color? Yeah. And then the other is around the capital. And for me, it's youth. What do we teach the next generation about business ownership, and about staying in your community and giving back to your community? And so there are a couple of things I want to do with the store in terms of adolescents and team building, and mostly around pastry and chocolate, but also thinking about sort of how do we invest in terms of education and resources and supporting young people's ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramona.
Thank you,
Ramona.
I love you back. I love you back.
This has been awesome. Just to be able to talk about, when you talk about wealth, we don't talk enough about it. So thank you for sharing your story and ensuring that we have, that we understand that it's running a business, starting a business is one, running a business, and then having access to capital. And you also talked about, having your business sold. That's important. We don't have to run these businesses forever. We can get acquired. We can be merged with somebody else. And so it's okay, and be able to shift so that we can continue to pay it forward. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.